Hey everybody, welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. What are you up to today? Hopefully it's fun at the very least, or just enjoyable. I am happily bringing you another episode of the Out of Spec podcast where we are talking about real world experiences, which is really fun because I think that really is what speaks to what it's like to live with an EV, of course. Today, we're going to speak to Patrick and Liv, the two folks that are running the Mach-E vlog. They have a Ford Mach-E, Mustang Mach-E, and they've been really championing this EV for a while now. And they just recently went on a total road trip length of 17 days from California over down to Santa Fe, New Mexico, up to Colorado and back again. And of course, as you may or may not know, Ford now has access to the Supercharger network for their EVs, the F-150 Lightning and the Mustang Mach-E. Technically, I guess, a Ford E-Transit, but we don't see as many of those around. And we're going to talk to them about their experience and what it was like exploring and being able to access this new charging amenity and how it really compares to the CCS network and all their takeaways from this long road trip. Let's plug in with our lovely friends, Patrick and Liv, and Jordan will join for the conversation too. This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes. Okay, everyone, Jordan and I are joined by Patrick and Liv of Mach-E Vlog, friends of us, friends of Out of Spec, friends of EV enthusiasts everywhere, and of course, Mach-E owners, because y'all just document everything, your experience from road trips to living daily to software updates, all that stuff, so that everyone can get all the information. And I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast today to talk about your recent, very long road trip in your Mach-E. So welcome.
Yay, thank you for having us.
Good to see you both.
Again.
Yeah, it's so fun when we get to just show up at like EV events all over the country and then Patrick and Liv are there.
Yeah. Excellent surprise.
So I know that y'all went on, like you said, and maybe y'all don't know tuning in, but Mach-E Vlog, Patrick and Liv went on a 17-day total road trip. That's a long time on the road.
Yeah, we weren't driving all of those days. Like we have day jobs. So we ended up in Denver for basically 2 weeks and did our day jobs from our friend's house. They had good Wi-Fi. And then we went to Electrify Expo where we saw you guys last.
Amazing. So where did you start?
We started all the way at the ocean in Oceanside.
The side of the ocean.
The side of the ocean. And then we took the southern route there.
We started on the 4th of July. Excuse me. So it was sort of like an opportunity because we took the 5th of July off. So we're like, we have 4 days. We can do a little bit longer route and enjoy the drive. Plus see Liv's godmother in Santa Fe, as well as go visit one of our favorite places, Meow Wolf, Santa Fe.
That was the first one, right?
Yes.
The original, the
exactly.
OG.
Have you guys been yet?
I've never been.
No, I've never been either.
No, let's meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it was just an opportunity to go and do some extra stuff. And I don't know. I always almost feel guilty because I can hear Kyle going like, push it further, go further. But we're like the complete opposite. We're like, ooh, there's a Flying J. Let's stop.
Yeah.
I've never been to one. And we're at 45% charge, but we're going to stop anyways.
Half the time.
Yes.
We have to pee.
That too. I mean, there's different techniques to EV road trips, and like there's one of efficiency, and then there's one of exploring the world and like taking the sightseeing of it, even if it's like EV focused. Because I do think it's fun to hit a Pilot Flying J to see like what that's like. You know, travel center for fuel turned electric. Of course, going to certain places that you want to go to see family, or like Meow Wolf in Santa Fe. And if folks haven't heard of Meow Wolf, it's crazy thing to describe, but it's like a museum immersion experience with like artwork and exploration. Like what
exactly with a non-linear story.
Yeah,
you can go there. People of any age can go there. We see like grandparents and little kids having a great time.
We're not doing like a dedicated video on it, but we're gonna sneak in some to our road trip videos that are coming out.
Yeah.
We're now just getting to editing all of these, so they should be out soon.
So yeah, of course we'll have all your your stuff linked below. But like, how many pieces of content did you try to get out of this, and like what all are you trying to share with the world as far as like? And I have to caveat this with, I really enjoy your road trips because I think what you do, and then sometimes what Kyle does, are two realities that coexist nicely, because sometimes people want to know, how fast can I get somewhere? And some people's road trips are like, you know what? I'm coming from a gas car where I was like, get to point A to point B as fast as humanly possible. I'm trying to make dinner with my family. Whereas other people are like, maybe trying to just explore the world, and they don't even want to think about charging. And so it's kind of cool to show that you can just explore, and you happen to be somewhere, maybe we're a little bit nerdy, so we're like, oh, you know what, I'm going to go to this mall that happens to have level 2 chargers, and I'll just plug in a little bit there, and like, oh, look how I came back and my car had an extra like 40 miles of range or something. Like, what all are you trying to showcase?
Well, you're spot on that we definitely come from a different side. But it was also like a really interesting time to travel, because I think everyone else was trying to do the same, right? The 4th of July, everyone's planning their road trips when they have an extra day. So I was both apprehensive when we're like, we're going to go out on this in one of the busier travel days.
Yeah.
But then it was also a very realistic opportunity. So it gave us a chance to experience some content and share some stuff that.
And it was for me as well. Like, one of the things is like, we've done basically both of these routes before, because we used to live in Colorado and now we live in Oceanside. So we've done it before. And in fact, we did it about 2 years ago. And for me, one of the interesting things is like, I didn't get a new car, but in that past 2 years, like, we got an upgrade to Blue Cruise 1.3 right before the trip. Plus now we have access to the Tesla Supercharger network. So it was, I wanted to document it in like real time of like, here's my reaction to having new features in Blue Cruise and an improved Blue Cruise, but also like a real time reaction of like, what is it like to go the same route where we were worried? Because like, you can, the old school thing when you have Electrify America is like, you're looking ahead at the next station, you're going, oh no, there's 3 out of 4 that are actually working. 1's derated and 2 are in use. What is it going to be like when I get there? So now it's like, oh, well, there's also a 12 stall supercharger just across the freeway. And then there's like another 12 stall supercharger on the other side of town. So now like that stress sort of like went away quite a bit.
Yeah,
wow.
Definitely.
Yeah, do you really feel that? Like, because I know obviously when all the automakers have come to their North American charging standard agreements with Tesla, how they present it is like, this is going to be so valuable for our drivers because they get access to a huge portion of this network. I did the VinFast road trip, and then a month later I did the Tesla road trip, same route but different directions from Colorado to Tennessee and vice versa. But there obviously is a bit of a difference. But also with the Ford Mach-E, like, you're not using necessarily Tesla's route planning, which I think is really great. But like, right. Yeah, can you speak to that? Like, how much of a difference does it really make to now have access to the Supercharger network?
Well, and we talk about this, of course, in the videos that we're doing, but it was 3 years ago, because we had a first edition before our current Mach-E GT, and we were like, well, we really don't need access to the Tesla Supercharger network. And part of that was because we'd show up to a EA station and we would be the only one there. Now there's always that worry because the maintenance hasn't been there, new stations haven't been there, and now a bunch more people are charging. So there is that part of it. I'm a little frustrated right now because I love using the Ford navigation system. It was excellent when it was just the EA network and ChargePoint and EVgo. It did a great job of navigating us. Now that they've added the Tesla Superchargers, they actually haven't added them to the navigation system yet. They're working on it. It's soon. I hope it's really soon because it's like I had to go back to the old before people had in-car route planning. So I used a lot of a better route planner. Yeah. And then we don't get the preconditioning. So it was a little bit more frustrating and a little bit more challenging. And I'm experienced. It was no big deal, but like I would hate to, have somebody that's like brand new to EVs and is like, okay, well, get this app out. Now take that address. Now plug it into your nav. Now that needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed soon. But it was only like one, little hurdle for me as an experienced navigation person.
And that's kind of a showcase to me of like a difference between a larger company versus a smaller one. Like Ford had Supercharger access before Rivian. I mean, on our cross-country truck race, I was in the Ford. We were using Superchargers. No one else could, except the Cybertruck, of course. But the Ford had no Superchargers in the route planning. In fact, the route planning, even when I was using EA, I found it very kind of inconsistent and frustrating. Although I have to caveat, some issues could have been with that truck in general. But overall, I'm not super thrilled with Ford's navigation system. But nowadays we have Android Auto and CarPlay. Of course, Google and Apple are really making strides to show chargers to people, because there are a lot of manufacturers who are not focusing on software quite as much. They are leaning on Google and Apple to make those strides for them, which is disappointing because Rivian had Supercharger access after Ford, but they already have Superchargers in the nav
from day one. Yeah,
and their navigation's quite good. Granted, I did an episode recently with Francie on all the issues with Rivian's navigation system, but those are all things that they can work out, and I'm just glad they've made the effort to take that leap. Ford, I'm sure, will do it. Ford does everything, and they pretty much always make good on their word. But it is interesting how it's slower, and it's kind of funny. You mentioned like going back to like the older school way of like a better route planner, which in some ways is reminiscent of the old school way of using like an atlas and a physical map.
Yeah.
At some point we had navigation on our phones, but like that was the old school way. And now there's a funny parallel here of like, oh, now your car should just do it all for you. But sometimes we have to take the old school route and navigate on our phone on a different app that's not necessarily talking to the car. The car can't precondition unless it's one of the few cars that has manual preconditioning, but even then, that's a whole can of worms. So there's ways around it. Like you could navigate to the nearest CCS, but the car may not precondition correctly because of the distances. And it's fun.
Yeah.
I think as maybe sort of nerds, we kind of like think that's kind of a fun game, but I do see why people would just be like annoyed. And I'm curious how many people you've interacted with who are annoyed with that.
Well, not enough people have the adapter, which is also another issue. Is like Ford/Tesla/Rivian are slow to get the adapters out. So we're very lucky we've had one, but it's also you're talking about some of these other apps and like Google Maps and Apple Maps. So Google, their EV route planning for non-Android automotive cars like Polestar is horrible, because it just says here's your route and we'll just show you EV chargers along the way, which is completely useless. And then Apple Maps is like, oh, we'll do your EV route planning for you, but it won't show any Tesla superchargers. And then there's other apps that we were like trying to use besides a better route planner, and it's just like the route looks good, it's telling me where to stop, and then I'm like, wait a second, that's a version 2 supercharger, which I know we don't have access to. Mm-hmm. And that's like a big red flag. I'm like, you guys got to fix this. You're like saying that you're doing EV route planning, but if I was a novice and didn't understand the difference, I would show up with 20 miles of range, and then it's like I can't plug in here, and the nearest EA is 30 miles away. I'm like SOL.
Yeah. For real. When you showed up, I just pulled up a picture of, using the adapter and stuff, but can you talk a little bit about the experience as Ford Mach-E GT drivers pulling up to a Tesla station? Hopefully you're pulling up to the right kind, not one that you can't charge at, and using the adapter. And also any other folks coming up to you. I feel like by now people know that other people can be charging on the network, but yeah, can you tell me about like, what's it like?
Well, I will say, by the way, like the sensors, like when you beep, 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 you're getting close to something, you kind of have to go to the beep, and then you're close enough. Like
that's when you know you're close enough.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think as Ford owners, and I'm sure Rivian had the same thing. Like I was a little bit worried about we were going to show up and somebody's going to be, like yelling at us, like, you can't charge. What are you doing here? Because we see some of that online. We've actually had like threats online, but it's just online. In person, nobody really cares. Like 95% of the people, like they're on their phone or whatever.
We don't know if they care, but no one pays any attention to us, and we're quite sociable. So we arrive and we're like, hi, and everyone's just like, you. Oh.
We did have, I think, where was it last?
Last we were, when we were leaving Vegas, this guy sticks his head out of his car and he's like, "Hey, you can charge those here?" And he was renting a Tesla. He rents an EV, and he'd rented a Mach-E before. So he rents them like every time he's traveling. I was like, "I didn't know you could charge them here. I'll get that next time." So
Well, he's going to have an adapter, though.
Yeah. I didn't go into like how that might work, but
yeah.
So yeah,
right.
And then people have been, like the few people that we have interacted with have been very nice. We were at one station in Cedar City, and we were trying to do the thing where we try to not block any stalls or anything like that. So I got the one on the very end, and I like parallel parked, trying not to take up two chargers. And then I saw a Tesla Model Y come up, and they were towing. And I'm like, "Ooh, he wants this charger." And we were like 2% from being done. So I'm like, I ran over before he could go drop his trailer. I was like, "Hey, we're literally done in like 2 minutes. Don't drop your trailer." And he was like, "Oh, thank you." So it's the reaction we've got from Tesla owners is like, we're all in this together. We're just trying to charge, and we try to return the favor, try to pick one spots that don't block anybody, and something like that, where we can just move along to the next charger or whatever. And it's, we all just want to get from point A to point B. We want to make it nice for them. We are thankful that Tesla has been making it welcoming for us. So that's great.
That's good. And the adapter, like actually using it, how is that technology going?
The only one issue.
It's fairly seamless. It is slower to use a Tesla Supercharger than like an EA350 because the heat slows it down. So like at 60% state of charge on like a EA350, I can pull close to 100 kilowatts still. When it's hot, and I mean very hot, like 110, the Tesla Supercharger will only give me about 59 or 60 kilowatts. So that was a bit like, do I go over to EA and maybe get a faster speed, or do I stick to Tesla and know it's going to work? And then the only other issue is the Tesla /Ford /Rivian adapter gets extremely hot. So we were just editing the video. There's a few curse words that I let out trying to disconnect, because it literally like burns your thumb when you're trying to push the button. And you know how the CCS port is hard to like, yeah.
That sucks.
Liv carries like baby wipes for wiping stuff down in the car. So like at the next stops, I was using the baby wipe because I got a sensitive thumb.
Smart. Yeah, I mean, that sucks. Go ahead, Jordan.
Well, I'm wondering on, these are all relatively new. And so I am wondering on the long-term reliability of these adapters. I'm surely they were over-engineered, if anything, if they are, recommended and offered by the OEMs. But it's like, they do get really hot. And, with the recent race to Vegas, I was heavily relying on that adapter on the Rivian. The Rivian's prone to overheating. The adapter's prone to overheating. I was overheating, like everything was overheating, and it was hot outside. It was 118 at one point, and it was just like, this is rough. And I also saw other Rivians who were not when they were using the adapters, but just running into overheating issues. One guy went to an EA, and I don't know if it was the station or his Rivian, but he was throttled. It was a 350, and he was throttled to 35 kilowatts.
Wow.
And he didn't even pay attention to the station. I was like, "Hey, you're getting this speed," and he's like, "Oh, I don't," because Rivian just said charge here for 20 minutes, which was assuming full speed. And so hopefully he was keeping an eye on that timer, but he probably also would have been confused because every 1 minute would have turned into like 10 minutes. But it's just like, it's challenging early days for, it's weird that's still early days because people have been road tripping EVs for over 10 years now, technically, but it's now really ramping up. And this is when we find all the edge cases much faster.
So maybe it's good that they're not getting these adapters out to everyone right away, because perhaps there's some improvements they could make with them not getting so hot, or at least, maybe they come with a mitt that, that comes with like hair supplies
oven
so that you don't burn your hand. Yeah, exactly.
We could sell Mach-E vlog oven mitts.
I would cook with that and travel with that.
We ended up using, even though it's not officially supported, as the A to Z adapter, and we just got the new one, the Pro with the better latch. So we did a review on that yesterday. But it didn't like the button didn't seem to get as hot. It didn't seem to get overall as hot. So I think there are improvements that they can make to these adapters, but
there was a point where we were charging 2 other people's cars. We were all sharing adapters and everyone was trying it out, and just removing the adapter, even like the A to Z, and we tried the Electron, like, because you have to grab it and pull it, so like trying to wrap it in your shirt and stuff, then versus our first experience charging at a Magic Dock, which was really really cool. So I really like the elegance of that, where you don't have to touch much except the cable. So it's like, it's, I don't know, double-edged sword. Like, it's really awesome to have the adapters, but it's certainly adding some challenges. Oven mitt.
Yeah,
an
oven mitt.
Yeah.
I charged at my first Magic Dock as well in Colorado with the VinFast, and I was like, this is so fun. Like, the whole movement and everything is seamless. And then I could charge, and I was like, yeah, I feel like special. We're doing it. I did park in the pull-through site because it's more difficult to plug in, but it does seem a little bit like ironic. Access to the supercharger stations is supposed to totally expand your world, but you might actually be getting lower charger speeds due to the heat issues. And so interesting. We'll have to see how that comes along.
And it was also interesting because like we've heard the golden supercharger, everything is just perfect. And of course the adapter is like a new wrinkle, but we also ran into like little minor things with the app. So at one station it said like 8 of 12 were down. And we're like, what the heck? I didn't think they ever went down. And then we go there and they're all in use. So it was like they were okay, but the app said they were down. And then there were a couple of times where there was actually one station where it was like, it said it was up, but we just couldn't get it to work with the adapters. So there's little things like that, but overall it was just way less stressful.
And them having more chargers, like versus going to an EA where there's 4, like going to a supercharger where there's like 20 or even 12, it makes such a difference in your stress level. You'll get something eventually.
I do have to say, and then our first, like, we left a bunch of superchargers, and then we're like in a gap where there's no V3 superchargers. So we're like, okay, we're back in EA world now, and it was it was through no fault of Electrify America. It was actually our most stressful stop because we pull up, and like one stall is down, no power, and then I'm like, the next one's no power, and then the next, I'm like, oh no, the whole station has no power. But we found out it wasn't EA's fault. The entire town had no power. So,
oh no!
Yeah, your anxiety level went through the roof.
Louise. Yeah, what'd you do?
Showing as online on the app.
Yeah, of course. EA was like, Liv called, and EA's like, yes, that station is online. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah, it's very much. Well, we have a whole bunch of road trip videos coming out, so some of the drama are documented in there.
Yes, well, we won't spoil it. What you did next to fix it.
I mean, we obviously made it. So it was a minor delay. We were looking at alternatives and potentially stretching it out. And we were like, oh,
Kyle would do it.
Kyle's going to be proud because it was like our next charger that we could stop at was
45 miles,
36 miles away. And we had like 38 miles of range. I was like, let's go for it. And then by the time we got to the freeway, it was like, I think it was like 35 miles of to our destination and 35 miles of range, and I'm like, yep, nope, I'm not Kyle.
Yeah, that kind of stress tolerance is sometimes you can't help it. Like, you're like, okay, I guess I'm showing up super low, but to choose it is it's another way of being. So if you had like the option, I'm burning question. If you had the option to go to a supercharger or like a CCS charging stations, both were going to work, but they do have like, you know, the Tesla one gets hot, maybe not the same speeds, but would you definitely choose the Tesla one still?
Does the Tesla one have only 4 chargers, or is it?
Or I don't know. It's hard. It is apples to oranges, but like, which experience out of good experiences do you prefer?
I think that it's always such a gamble now with EA. It's frustrating because we were sort of talking about this, is like, even when you see it, it's usually 1 out of 4 is down. So you're really talking about 3 stalls. And even if you're like 5 minutes away, those 3 stalls could fill up quickly. So I think that was my overall thing, was like, I could feel my stress level when we had to hit Wagon Mound and Green River and Williams, the stops we actually had to absolutely do EA. I was, hey, Liv, can you check PlugShare? Can you check the EA app? And we kept checking it over and over. With the Tesla, I was like, yeah, it's in needles. We'll be there when we're there, and we didn't sweat it.
And a huge chunk of that, for me at least, is that they have more chargers, but also like I feel like Tesla people are more used to what to do when a charger is busy. So like Tesla drivers seem to have more experience with the queuing system, and so far we haven't really been to busy EA chargers much, but we did experience one on the trip, and it's kind of like chaos. Like no one knows what's going on, who's waiting, where, what, I don't know. And like the Tesla Supercharger I'm thinking of is like down the road from here, and there's always a line, but like everyone just waits in line, and then the next person goes, but like so far I feel like our experience with Electrify America is like, who's waiting, who, what, who, where, am I cutting line, don't hurt me, It's stressful.
That's interesting. Yeah, different behaviors. And one part that you mentioned as well that's unique to Ford is the Blue Cruise. And you got an update. Was it while you were on the trip?
It was the weekend before. They've and for people that aren't familiar, is like Mach-E's were coming with Blue Cruise 1.0. In 2023, they started deploying 1.2, but only on new cars. The 2024s have 1.3. So they kept promising, and they literally promised last summer that like cars like ours from 2022 and older would get upgraded to 1.3 by the end of last summer. So it got delayed a lot, which is unfortunate, but we did get it right before we left on the road trip. And the differences are at 1.2 and above, you have assisted lane changes, in-lane repositioning, so it moves over for like big trucks in the next lane. Scoochie. I like that. And it can do like slow for curves, and recognize speed limit signs, is like that as well. But 1.3, in addition to those features, is supposedly just smoother and better. So we were really excited. We've tested it out before. So to get it before an actual road trip, it's like a huge bonus, because like you're not just like, oh, let me test it out and try a lane change. It's like we're using it for 2,300 miles and absolutely loved it.
Oh, good.
Far less disengagements, because a lot of times it would not really disengage, but it would just tell you to put your hands on, like for almost every off ramp. Now it's like most of them it handles with no problems. Every once in a while it's like, hey, put your hands back on. But like we'd go through sections of like Arizona and stuff like that, and I was like, I touched a blinker to change lanes. That's how the assisted lane change works. But I wouldn't touch the steering wheel for 40 miles or so. So it just made it really, really, really nice.
That's cool, because Jordan drove in a Lightning for a very, very, very long time. I mean, in a row. You drove from Florida to California with Andreas and Dave, and y'all had Blue Cruise, but it was before this, right? So how does this sound compared?
I mean, it sounds great. Blue Cruise is a great system. Unfortunately, we couldn't use ours for quite a few stretches because Blue Cruise only works up to what's the
81.
Speed? 81. And we were doing 85 for a lot of that. Long stretches where the speed limit was like 80. But when it works great. And me and Kyle used the Mustang Mach-E we tested in that event. Guys, did that have the newer Blue Cruise?
Up in Seattle, yeah, it had a new one.
Yeah, so we were testing it there a bit too, and like it was awesome. And I really do like that system. I like GM Super Cruise. I like autopilot, but it is frustrating, Francie, to your point you made in another video. The amount of torque needed to give the Model 3 steering wheel to let you know that you're still there is really frustrating. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, you just nudge the scroll wheel one click really fast. And there's ways to alleviate that. And it's just enough to where if you're resting your hand on the wheel and putting a little bit of weight, the car knows you're there. But that just feels old fashioned after using a hands-free system that's done really well. So I have to appreciate those systems. So yeah, I like Blue Cruise quite a bit. Like that's one of my favorite pieces of tech. And I mean the Lightning and the Mach-E, they cruise so nicely, like they're comfortable. And so there's just something about chewing through highway miles, chomping through miles, just relaxed. Hopefully not too relaxed. Like that's the challenge. You gotta have more coffee.
Well, my brother asked me, or brother friend, like everybody asks, is like, do you get more complacent on road trips while using it? And I'm like, I feel like, first of all, especially when we're clipping through like 500-600 miles in a day, when you get toward the end, like I don't feel as fatigued because I haven't been like just focusing on keeping the car centered in the lane for the past 6 hours. So, and it's like, I can look around and be more aware of things. Like we also, like another thing in this first road trip video, there was like a brush fire, like in the median of the freeway. So it was like, I could see that well ahead of time and actually disengage Blue Cruise. Cause I'm like, it's just not a situation where you want to be like cruising by at 80 miles an hour. So, it basically, it's like it lets me look around and be aware more of dangers like that are far off so that I can be better prepared versus being focused right on the lane in front of me. So it's relaxing, but I think it means like relaxed in a way that keeps you refreshed, if that makes sense.
And you have more opportunities to actually like take care of yourself. Like you want to grab a beverage and like open it up. The steering wheel is good as long as you're watching ahead. That's fun. Like you're not like we eat in the car often, but on a road trip, the luxury of being able to have a sandwich or something hands-free is pretty great.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I noticed that too on the VinFast road trips that I've had. I do like the driving assistant system, but like, yeah, you get to work a little bit less hard with your brain of like keeping it in the lines and stuff. And then I rode back with the Tesla Model 3, the Beak, which doesn't have FSD, but has the auto steer stuff. And I did find that if I like rested a hand and then another hand on top, like through the wheel, that was enough torque to like, or enough pressure to just keep it there. But I was like, I have to arrange myself to make sure that it knows I'm here, which is fine. It does drive fine. But
it's interesting too, because like everybody talks about like the hands-free portion, but there's a lot of times when because like Liv's like, oh, let me get you doing hands-free, and I'm like, I would have my hand resting on the steering wheel anyways
by default,
because it's like, what else am I going to do? Just like sit there for like 6 hours. It was like, it's and I tried the like this, and I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. Let me put my hands back.
Kind of spooky. Yeah. How is the comfort of the Mach-E 2 on road trips?
It's great.
It's great.
I enjoyed it a lot. It does not have ventilated seats, so that's the only thing that I'd personally want different. But even in the terrible temperatures, it wasn't too bad at all, and it's super comfortable.
Yeah, we like cold environments, so we literally were driving through like 114 degree temps with the car still set at 68, and it was great. Like I wasn't hot. I've been in some other cars where it says 68, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like dripping with sweat. It was nice and chilly.
Yeah, and it has a full glass roof, but the IR coating is so good, so you don't feel it at all. I was just saying the IR coating is really good. It's funny. Okay, so we did the rally drive in Seattle, right, with Jordan, and now we would love a rally. Good. The rally was awesome, but it doesn't have the glass roof. So the whole time that we were on the road trip, we're like, could we do without this? Couldn't we do without it? So like, I feel very aware of like the temperature of it, because I don't think we really determined if we could do without it, but
we like going through like Glenwood Canyon in Colorado with being able to look up and see the rock formations. But I really do like having the glass roof, but I don't notice it a lot. And the IRR coating and the tint on the Mach-E roof is actually excellent. So didn't feel like I was getting baked even, in the desert sun. So
good.
Overall, it's just we've said that it's really comfortable. Although we did have a Lightning for a week when we were in North Carolina.
Yeah,
that is such a great road tripper. It feels like you're in your living room, just cruising down the road, and it's a bit like bouncy and smooth. It's pretty fantastic.
That's nice.
Excellent.
Yeah, I have to try a lightning road trip. I haven't yet. I know that Jordan and Dave and Andreas really, sat back and enjoyed their
And then we
road
can have a
trips
pizza
and
oven.
I know, I was just thinking
Tom
the same
Malogny.
thing. Yeah.
yeah, crazy stuff like that. So overall, it sounds like it was a pretty successful road trip. You got to like try supercharging a lot of different places, but also, stop places that you wanted to stop. What was the Pilot Flying J station like? Or what'd you think? I mean,
Really nice and really expensive. So I think
it's
61 cents per kilowatt hour versus like Needles that was at a supercharger and it was 20 cents per kilowatt hour. But it's nice. I like the layout. There's only 4 stalls, which I'm like, I think you need more than that. But it was configured in a way where you could do a pull through trailer. Of course, Flying J is really nice. And if you're one of those road trippers that wants to just truck it, no pun intended, they have showers and everything. So it's really nice to have like a real travel center versus some of the places like Baker, California, where it's like this gas station and Dairy Queen that's overrun by the number of Teslas and non-Teslas that are rolling through there, plus the gas cars. I thought it was excellent, except for the price.
Yeah, that is something.
I'll add some context just in case. So I am an amputee. So I have spent numerous days in a wheelchair in my life, and can be in a wheelchair at various points. So I really feel strongly about the accessibility and the need for accessibility at charging stations. So I've really been trying to think about that more now as I've been more ambulatory. Like I feel very fortunate for that situation. It makes me feel like I should look at chargers more. So I think like Flying J was actually accessible. And I really like the chargers that are attached to gas stations that have restrooms that are on the same level, or gas stations oftentimes already have pre-existing dips for wheelchairs, or, are kind of like made accessibly or have automatic doors, whatever. So an opportunity that we had on this road trip was to see so many different charging situations and so many that are not great. Like Needles, California, we had the cheapest charging overall, cheapest supercharging was 20 cents, right? But it was very difficult to get to the facilities, to get to across the street to where there were restrooms, and you had to get a key and then go out and everything like that. So I loved seeing the Flying J. I really liked where the Magic Dock was, and I'm trying to remember where Copper Mountain.
Copper Mountain.
Yeah.
That was a good spot.
Yeah, attached to facilities, accessible on one level. They even have like the handicap charging.
And one thing about the Flying J is, even though they have the bollards to protect the chargers from somebody hitting them, they were positioned well enough so that you can get a wheelchair in to still charge. Exactly. Because there's a lot of chargers. I think it was like a Circle K that we stopped at in Colorado. It was great, and you could tell they were like, and here's how you can get out if you're in a wheelchair. But then it's like, but you can't get to your charge port. Or the handle.
The handle was at the hood of the car. So how would you get to that?
Yeah.
So yeah, we've seen a lot of different charging solutions, and some are great and some are not.
Yeah, I think there's the focus on getting chargers out and deployed, but then it's also the question of accessibility with like ADA accessibility, and then also safety that I think is going to become like lighting and just like generally, is this in a safe location? That needs to become more and more of the conversation. And I think that if we looked into it, we would find that a lot of these stations are not ADA accessible when they should be. But I do know that GM has a specific focus on making sure that sites are as accessible as possible. That's very much in their priorities. So I think that's cool, but definitely needs to be followed. And it's something that I think is like overlooked because we're just like, where are the chargers? And it's like, but what is the experience once we get to them for everyone involved?
Yeah.
And I just remember too, at Copper Mountain, they had one ADA spot, and it was literally right next to the building. So it was sort of like, and it's very clearly labeled too, of like, you can use this if you're not handicapped, but use this last. Love the signage and stuff, and it's just going to take a few minor tweaks, and I think we'll be there.
But it is like a conversation that we need to be having because of the investment of installing this stuff. Like we want these facilities to be around for a long time. So before doing this and these investments, this is a great opportunity to discuss like how to make it better. So I think we need to do another road trip and research more.
Oh, sure. East Coast.
Just keep doing them. Never
More.
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep doing them. Yeah, I mean, one thing also you said like the PFJ sites are 4 stalls. That's NEVI too. The National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program only requires 4. Basically, the site has to be designed in a way that there are 4 DC fast charging ports, so 4 cars could be charging simultaneously. But then that also means that that's just the minimum. Like that's all you have to do. And then I think there probably are ADA requirements within that as well. But again, like who's holding them up to all the CPOs when they're designing the sites? Like, it's great that you are looking, but of course, like you shouldn't have to just carry that as someone who is like directly affected by this, a lot of the times live. So we all got to make sure that we're looking out for everyone here, but it's a really good point. Mm-hmm.
And it can be really hard because it's like, I don't want Liv to be the only one that's considering this stuff, but I know that like it took me a while to learn some of the things of like, oh, this is why it's not a good site, because there's like one that's in North Las Vegas, and it looks like, oh, well, it's a decent, easy path to get to the bathroom, but then you look at it and there's like a curve the entire way down in the center of the like parking spaces, which means like you and I could just like walk straight in a line and be there quickly. But if you're in a wheelchair, you're going like basically down the path of all the cars for a very long way to get around. So and
you're like below sight line.
And you're below sight line. So it's a lot of stuff that we try to cover from different perspectives, but I think it's critical because like a lot of people don't realize that, even with gas stations, there's usually a button on the pump that you can push if you need ADA assistance, which can still be problematic because they don't necessarily have the staff that can always do that, but they're required to have that. And these are the same type of things that eventually, we'll see like, how is this addressed? There's some stations that are being built out here in California that are supposedly going to have like on-site attendants at some point for like a 40 stall station, which is fantastic for reliability, and then having somebody to help newbies out as well as anybody that needs assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to pay attention to, and I feel like we need like a checklist when we show up to charging sites to be like, not only does this have like shade, what are the charging speeds, all that, but like what is the ADA accessibility? Also, like I don't know if I know all of, I need the measurements sometimes to make sure the grade is right and stuff like that. But like to look around and be like, what am I aware of here? It's not only about windshield wiper cleanings and stuff and bathrooms, but those kind of things. Yeah, just noting the amenities. I think that's a great point, and I want us to continue to focus on it.
Maybe we need like a little like cheat sheet rating system for Charger, like pass or fail. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I was talking to these founders of a company called Chargely just earlier, and we were talking about that. Yeah, and how I was like, maybe y'all should make like a checklist of when you show up to a charger, like you can, kind of outfit these things, or maybe whoever can make it. You can make it for yourself in the meantime. But
I'm on the accessibility committee with Chargely.
Yeah.
So
you are?
It's actually part of meeting with them that has made me so passionate about it. We've been sort of giving them input and stuff.
And Liv actually gave them the input on their app now where you can rate the accessibility of a charger. And they're like, oh, we'll have that for everybody. And Liv's like, wait a second, let's make that optional, because somebody that's never thought about it will be like, yeah, there's a bathroom over there. Yeah. You're like, no, there's a hill in the way.
So I love that, like Chargely, that they're considering the stuff as they're building their app. And it's also like made me think about it more as well. I think like when none of us are aware of anything if it's not something we're exposed to in some way or another. So I'm glad I've gotten this opportunity too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm pulling up Chargely's page in case anyone wants to check them out. But yeah, that's super cool. And Patrick and Liv, I want to also thank you for coming on and telling me all about, and Jordan and our audience, all about your most recent Mach-E road trip. And I want to ask each of you, like Patrick and Liv, especially about Mach-E road trips, and then Jordan about EV road trips in general. But if you had like one piece of advice to give, especially for Mach-E drivers, Patrick and Liv, what would it be?
Ooh, one piece of advice.
We did a charging tips, or not EV road trips video.
Nice. Okay, so
while we were on the
and then I saw you did one.
That's right. We're jinxing.
It's the season.
I think the main thing is it's okay to charge too much. Like we started getting this mindset of like, don't charge more than you need to, and but like, don't worry about it. If it says go to 60%, go to 80. It's what, 5 extra minutes, and it might save you.
Yeah. And I mean, man, I have so many tips, but I think I like, well, for one, some people still don't know that the J1772 adapter is different from the J3400. So just like knowing that those are different things, they're both great to have. I think we're thrilled that we have both. And then just like having a backup plan, like people who are coming from ICE to EV who are used to like, we're just going on a road trip, we're going to go. And then I've heard people say things like, yeah, I know that the dealership has charging. And it's like, no, just like, have a plan. It's a little bit different from ICE vehicles, but like have a plan. I guess this EV, this is not Mach-E specific. Mach-E specifically, have a great time. Look good. I don't know.
Bring fancy ponies.
Bring fancy ponies. That's what I give to everyone when
you do
on the road.
Jordan?
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think somewhat that goes hand in hand with, charging a bit extra. Like, sure, it's cool to know. And I think we do push the bar here out of Spec with like, okay, how quickly can you get somewhere? Like I said, but it's also quite freeing to be able to just charge extra and not worry about it. And I do think people, once they start living with an EV a bit, and if they do DC fast charge on a road trip, they start to realize like, wait, that's not as much time as I thought. Like when I first started doing EV road trips, I was caught up in this mindset, not caught up in it, but just like aware of like, oh, people assume you just sit there and charge for a while, which didn't stress me. In fact, that excited me. I was like, oh, awesome. I can sit at a charger and get a bunch of work done. And then by the time you like, hit the bathroom and get some food or like stretch your legs, and then like, it's out of Spec, so we're monitoring charging speed and like, how does this compare to the curve? And then there's no time left for work. So yeah, I do like
true.
Charging a bit extra, which also helps with the be prepared, because every once in a while you do have chargers that are full with a huge line or maybe not functioning. And it's like, you know what, maybe I should just hop down the road to the next one. And now that, Ford and a lot of people are opening up the charging, Tesla's opening up the charging to every other company. And it's like, that's alleviating a lot of that early stress, I think, that you guys mentioned earlier of like, okay, we're hopping from EA to EA. I hope these work. And it is frustrating that we're years into EA and I still have that mindset, and it's being met with negative reinforcement because I keep showing up to EAs and they keep having issues. And so I am likely, if I was to pick an EA or a Tesla at the same exact exit, both equally off the highway, I'd just pick a Tesla at this point, because it might charge a bit slower. But then again, I'm not typically in a hurry unless I'm doing like a race to Vegas. And so I would rather just plug in, not think about it. Whereas sometimes I've just had, varying issues. And I guess the other thing that is fun to me, and not everyone's outgoing, but like I'm an extrovert, and like the chargers have become the new water cooler. And it's funny, like I go get gas at Costco, no one talks to each other. They're just like in and out, get me out of here. Whereas I go sit at a charger for a bit, and it's like, chances are more than a 50-50 chance the person who pulls up and charges wants to talk or are open to it. Maybe they don't approach me, maybe I just approach them, or I like kind of get a feel for like, would they talk or not? And it's almost always met with like a good conversation. So don't be shy, I guess, is a piece of advice. Like unless you want to be, that's fine. But like, we're all in this together.
I love that too. And like just the fact that now there are other EVs at the Superchargers, I think like it's exciting. Like who's going to show up? Like when a Rivian pulled up at the Supercharger, it's like, yes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a community at Supercharger or at charging stations in general and leaning in. But yeah, definitely check out y'all's advice for EV road trips as well from Patrick and Liv, because when you're living it, you're like, oh yeah, I could really use this along the way, or this kind of attitude even. It's helpful. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, Patrick and Liv. And of course, it was so great to see you in Denver. That was really fun.
River City.
Yeah, that was fun. And thank you, Jordan, for coming onto the podcast.
Yeah,
You know,
I gotta
as
say,
always.
all of you guys have refreshing road trips, and I enjoy watching it. And
That's nice.
I would say, you know, by the time this is out, Francie's road trip in the VinFast is up, and she notably doesn't necessarily rush through things, and that's kind of refreshing. Like watching it, or in my case, editing it. It's like it looks like you actually had a genuinely good trip, Francie, because you were just you and Rafiki were just trotting your way across the country, and you weren't in a race. And it will be interesting to have the VinFast in a race to Vegas. Well, we're planning on that, but it's fun to see it in a different element. And now that we have it on screen for our viewers, it's amazing how close the color matches Liv's hair. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I know. I
That's
was
true.
so excited to see you guys pull up. This is at our Ford EV meetup. All EVs welcome. And when I saw the VinFast rolling up, I was so excited. So I was filming. I didn't even notice who was driving until like the camera was in the window. I was like, what?
I think it was sort of like the star of the show because like
Yeah.
it was mostly Mach-E's and Lightnings and a few other things, but it was
What?
oh my gosh, what is this thing showing
Yeah.
up? And then of course they knew it was you guys.
Spring roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly miss her. But to your point, Jordan, too, like there's not a lot of things we can control, but we can control our attitude. So might as well
Right.
our outlook on life. And that applies to EV road trips. So
Hopefully
thank
we
you.
can bring hopefully we can bring
Yeah.
the VinFast to more meetups like that one. It was
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
I'd say we like brought a knife to a gunfight, but that sounds violent. We brought a walk to a cook-off.
There you go.
It was a blast. So really glad we got to see you guys, and really glad we got to have you on the show. And you
Yes.
know, we'll do more episodes with you lots in the future. It's always a good time.
Yeah, everyone.
In the middle.
Yeah. Tune into Mach-E Vlog, follow their stuff. All the links will be in the show notes. Thank you both so much for coming onto the podcast. And of course, thank you, listener, for tuning in for another episode of the Out of Spec podcast. If you enjoyed us, you know how to let us know. Drive safely, stay charged. See you next time. Bye.